The stars winked in the endless black of space as the Coalition warship Defiant limped through the debris field. What remained of its crew worked frantically to patch hull breaches and restore power to critical systems. Admiral Kella Noor stood before the main viewing screen, her four-fingered hands clasped tightly behind her back. The violet skin around her eyes had darkened with exhaustion. "Casualty report," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Officer Gell, a furry, Meridian with a cybernetic eye, looked up from his console. 37 dead, Admiral. 42 wounded. He paused. The Praxon and the Starward were completely destroyed, no survivors. Noor closed her eyes briefly. 3 ships had entered the Vega system. Only the Defiant would leave it. Another defeat. Another retreat. "The Varaxian ships?" she asked. "All 5 operational and in pursuit, Admiral. They will overtake us in approximately 4 hours. Noor nodded. "Send out the data package to Coalition Command. Make sure they understand what happened here." What happened was what always happened when they faced the Varaxians. The Coalition forces fought bravely, followed their training, used their best tactics, and were utterly defeated. The Varaxians had appeared 70 years ago at the edge of known space. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. The only certainty was their methodical advance through the galaxy, consuming every world they encountered. Their black, insect-like ships moved in perfect coordination, adapting to any attack, strategy within minutes. Their neural toxins broke down the will of even the bravest soldiers. Their hive mind allowed them to act as one terrifying entity, and they never, ever negotiated. Noor walked slowly to the tactical station, where Commander Rex was reviewing the battle footage. The reptilian officer's scales had paled with stress. Same pattern," he said, pointing at the holographic display. "We adapted our approach exactly as planned. We used the randomized attack vectors. We employed the new shield frequencies." His clawed finger traced the movement of Coalition ships, and they still anticipated every move. Noor leaned closer. "Show me the moment they adapted." The hologram shifted, showing the initial engagement. For the first 3 minutes, the Coalition attack had been effective. Their ships had damaged 2 Varaxian vessels. Then, with frightening precision, the Varaxian ships had changed formation and launched a devastating counterattack. "It's as if they share a single mind," Rex said. "Once one of them learns something, they all know it." "That's exactly what happens," said a soft voice from behind them. Noor turned to see Dr. Alara Voss, the Coalition's leading xenobiologist. The small, pale woman looked even more tired than the rest of them. She had spent years studying the Varaxians, often examining remains after battles. "The Varaxian neural structure is unlike anything we've encountered," Voss explained, joining them at the console. "They don't just communicate, they share consciousness through a quantum network. They quite literally think as one entity, which is why we can never surprise them," Noor said. "Once they've seen a tactic, the entire species knows how to counter it." Voss nodded. "Exactly, and their organic ships adapt on a cellular level. They're not building new defenses, they're growing them." Commander Rex slammed his fist on the console. "Then what's the point? How do we fight an enemy that always knows what we're going to do?" Noor had no answer. The question haunted every Coalition commander. In 70 years of conflict, they had never found a solution. 32 civilizations had fallen to the Varaxians. Billions of lives lost. Countless cultures extinguished. The ship's emergency lights flickered, casting red shadows across the command deck. "Admiral," Officer Gell called out, "we've received a priority transmission from Coalition Command." "Put it through," Noor said. The holographic display changed to show the face of High Chancellor Thrawn. The ancient Arxian's translucent skin revealed the worried pulsing of vessels beneath. "Admiral Noor," he said, his voice thin with age, "we have received your preliminary report. I regret to inform you that similar defeats have occurred in 6 other systems. The Varaxian advance has accelerated." Noor felt the weight of those words. "What are your orders, Chancellor?" Thran's large eyes blinked slowly. "The Coalition Council has approved the Omega Protocol." A chill ran through the command deck. The Omega Protocol was the contingency of last resort, the acknowledgement that defeat was inevitable. We are to begin evacuation of all remaining coalition worlds, Thrawn continued. We will retreat to the Outer Rim and attempt to preserve what we can of our civilizations. We're abandoning the core systems? Rex asked in disbelief. We have no choice, Thrawn replied. Our scientists estimate that at the current rate of Vraxian expansion, the entire galaxy will fall within 50 standard years. Nor straightened her shoulders. There must be something we haven't tried, some weakness we haven't discovered. We have explored every option, Admiral. Every species in the Coalition has contributed their best minds to this fight. The Vraxians are simply too advanced, too coordinated, he seemed to search for the right word, too perfect in their unity. Dr. Voss, who had been quietly listening, suddenly stepped forward. Perhaps that's it, Chancellor. Perhaps what we need isn't another advanced species, but something different, something unpredictable. What do you mean? Thrawn asked. The Vraxians' greatest strength is their shared consciousness. They think as one, which makes them incredibly efficient but potentially vulnerable to something they've never encountered, something that doesn't follow predictable patterns. Nor turned to the scientist. Do you have something specific in mind, Doctor? Voss hesitated. There have been reports from our deep space monitoring stations, unusual energy signatures from an unexplored sector in the spiral arm, some kind of developing civilization that doesn't match any known species profile. We've detected hundreds of emerging civilizations, Thrawn said dismissively. None have technology advanced enough to stand against the Vraxians. But that's just it, Voss insisted. We've always searched for advanced technology. Maybe what we need isn't more advanced weapons but a different way of thinking. These signals show unusual patterns, almost random variations that our analysts can't predict. Nor felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a flicker of hope. Chancellor, she said, I request permission to investigate these signals. If there's even a small chance of finding an ally with a different perspective, it's worth pursuing. Thrawn was silent for a long moment. Very well, Admiral. You have my authorization. But be aware, the Omega Protocol remains in effect. The evacuations will continue. After the transmission ended, Commander Rex looked at Noor skeptically. Do you really think some unknown species could make a difference against the Vraxians? Noor gazed at the star map. At the ever-expanding territory marked in the ominous red that indicated Vraxian control. I don't know, she admitted. But we've tried fighting like ourselves and failed. Perhaps it's time to find someone who fights differently. Little did she know that in a small solar system at the edge of the spiral arm, a species called humans was about to make their first steps into interstellar space. A species whose unpredictability would change the course of the Galactic War forever. Dr. Alan Winters checked the readings on his tablet for the 5th time in an hour. The ECS Pathfinder, humanity's first true interstellar vessel, was performing better than anyone had expected. The experimental drive had successfully taken them, farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. How's she holding up, Doc? Captain Rick Mason asked as he floated into the science bay. The artificial gravity was temporarily powered down to conserve energy while they took measurements. Surprisingly well, Alan replied, pushing his glasses up his nose. The fold space drive is stable. We've traveled nearly 7 light years in 3 days. Captain Mason whistled. Not bad for humanity's first attempt. It was an understatement. Just 5 years ago, faster-than-light travel had been considered impossible. Then a team at the Global Space Initiative had discovered the principles that led to the fold space drive. The technology was still new, experimental, and not entirely understood, but it worked. And that was enough to launch humanity's first mission beyond their solar system. The Pathfinder carried a crew of 24, scientists, engineers, and military personnel. Their mission was simple: explore, gather data, and return to Earth. A small first step into the vast unknown of interstellar space. Bridge to Captain Mason. The intercom crackled. Mason tapped his wrist communicator. Mason here. Sir, we're picking up some unusual readings ahead. Lieutenant Powell thinks it might be artificial. Mason and Alan exchanged glances. The mission parameters included the possibility of first contact, but no one really expected it to happen. "On my way," Mason said. "Dr. Winters, you too." The bridge of the Pathfinder was compact but efficient. Screens displayed information from various systems while the large forward viewport showed the star-filled blackness of space. Lieutenant Diane Powell, the communications specialist, was bent over her console with a frown of concentration. "Report," Mason ordered as he and Alan entered. "We detected energy signatures approximately 2 million kilometers ahead," Powell explained. "The patterns are definitely artificial. And," she hesitated, "they're moving toward us." Security Chief Kevin Martinez, a former Marine with close cropped hair and a perpetual serious expression, spoke up. "I recommend we go to alert status." "Captain," Mason nodded. "Do it, but let's not jump to conclusions. This is what we came for, people." Alan moved to the science station where Susan Richardson, the mission's xenobiologist, was already analyzing data. "What do you think?" he asked, quietly. "I think we're about to make history," she replied without looking up from her screen, one way or another. The alert klaxon sounded briefly as the ship's status changed. The artificial gravity came back online as power was redirected to essential systems. "Visual contact in 30 seconds, announced the navigator, a young man named Greg Foster. Mason straightened his uniform. "All right, first contact protocols. We're representatives of Earth now. Let's make a good impression." The tension on the bridge was palpable as they waited. Alan realized he was holding his breath and forced himself to exhale slowly. "Contact," Foster announced. On the viewport, a ship appeared. It was unlike anything they had imagined. A sleek vessel with an iridescent hull that seemed to shimmer with colors that shouldn't exist in space. It was clearly advanced, possibly centuries beyond Earth technology. "Are they scanning us?" Mason asked. "Yes, sir," Powell replied. "Passive scans, only, non-invasive." Another ship appeared beside the first. This one was different, angular, with sections that appeared damaged. "We're being hailed," Powell announced, surprise evident in her voice. "They're transmitting in multiple frequencies. It's like they're trying different communications protocols." Mason straightened his shoulders. "Open a channel. Standard greeting package." Powell's fingers flew over her console. "Channel open. Sending greeting." The humans had prepared extensively for this moment. The greeting package included mathematical sequences, simple images, and basic language information, universal concepts that any advanced civilization should recognize as an attempt at communication. The response came almost immediately. The main screen flickered and then displayed an alien face. The bridge crew fell silent. The alien had violet skin stretched over an elongated skull. Its large eyes blinked vertically instead of horizontally. When it spoke, its mouth moved in unfamiliar patterns. "They're sending language data," Powell reported, her voice hushed with awe. It's like they already know about us." "That's impossible," Alan said. "We've never been this far from Earth." The alien continued speaking, and suddenly fragments of English began to emerge from the ship's translation system. "Request assistance, emergency, Vraxian advance, coalition forces." Mason glanced at Alan. "Are we getting this right?" Before Alan could answer, the translation became clearer. "I am Admiral Kellanor of the Galactic Coalition. Have been monitoring your civilization's emergence. We need your help. Our galaxy is under attack by a species called the Vraxians." Mason stepped forward. "This is Captain Rick Mason of the Earthship Pathfinder. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. We have no knowledge of any galactic conflict." The alien, Admiral Noor, seemed to sag slightly. "As we feared. Your species is newly emergent, yet our readings indicate—" She turned to speak to someone off-screen, then returned her gaze to the humans. "Captain Mason, my scientists have detected unusual properties in your ship's communications. May we send a delegation to discuss this further?" Mason hesitated, then made the decision that would change humanity's future forever. "We would welcome your delegation, Admiral." 3 hours later, Alan Winters found himself sitting across from aliens in the Pathfinder's conference room. Besides Admiral Noor, there was Dr. Alara Voss, a pale, almost translucent alien who studied the humans with intense curiosity, and Commander Rex, a reptilian officer who seemed constantly on edge. Your neural patterns, Dr. Voss was saying. They're unlike anything we've encountered. They contain randomization elements that our scientists believe could disrupt Vraxian coordination. I'm sorry, Susan Richardson interrupted, but we still don't fully understand who these Vraxians are or what threat they pose. Admiral Noor's expression grew grave. The Vraxians are a hive-mind species that has conquered nearly a third of the galaxy. They assimilate or destroy all other life forms. They are approaching your sector of space. Without intervention, they will reach your world within 5 years. The human crew exchanged alarmed glances. Why us? Alan asked. You clearly have more advanced technology. What could we possibly offer against such a threat? Technology isn't everything, Dr. Voss replied. The Vraxians' power comes from their perfect neural synchronization. They think as one entity. But your species... She hesitated, searching for words. Your minds are different, unpredictable, individualistic, in a way we've never seen. Our preliminary scans show your neural patterns might interfere with their hive-mind connection. Captain Mason leaned forward. You're saying humans might be naturally resistant to these Vraxians? More than resistant, Commander Rex said, speaking for the first time. You might be the weapon we've been searching for. Alan looked around at his fellow crew members. They had left Earth seeking knowledge, hoping perhaps to find microbial life or unusual stellar phenomena. Instead, they had stumbled into a galactic war. Captain, he said quietly to Mason, we need to report this to Earth immediately. Mason nodded, then addressed the aliens. Admiral Noor, we need time to process this information and contact our government. This is beyond our mission parameters. Of course, Noor replied. But please understand, Captain, time is one luxury the galaxy no longer has. As the meeting concluded, Alan caught Susan's eye across the table. She had the same thought he did. Humanity had just taken its first step into the stars, only to discover the void was already engulfed in flames. 6 months after first contact, Earth had changed. The news that humans were not alone in the universe and that a hostile alien force threatened all life had united the planet in ways nothing else could. Old enemies became allies. Resources once used for war were redirected to defense and space technology. At the Global Defense Complex in Nevada, Commander Frank Miller watched as his squad prepared for another training session. 20 men and women in specially designed combat suits ran through drills with coalition weapons. They moved with confidence now, a far cry from the confused soldiers who had first encountered alien technology half a year ago. They're improving, said Dr. Maya Jackson, who stood beside him on the observation deck. The neuroscientist had been studying the interaction between human brain patterns and Vraxian neural networks since the coalition shared their research. They need to improve faster, Frank replied. The Vraxians took another system last week. Maya nodded grimly. Reports from coalition space painted a bleak picture. Despite the resources being poured into the war effort, the Vraxians continued their advance. The coalition had managed to slow them down but couldn't stop them. The good news, Maya said, is that our latest tests confirm the disruptive effect. Human neural patterns definitely interfere with the Vraxian hive mind. The closer we get, the stronger the disruption. Frank watched as his soldiers practiced with energy weapons that had been science fiction just months ago. But is it enough to make a difference in actual combat? That's what we're about to find out, said a voice behind them. They turned to see Admiral Kella Noor entering the observation deck. In the month since the Pathfinders returned to Earth with coalition representatives, Noor had become a familiar figure at the defense complex. Today, her usually composed face showed signs of strain. What's happened? Frank asked. The Vraxians have broken through our defenses in the Praxis system, Noor said. There are 50,000 refugees on the main planet with no way out. Frank straightened. And you want us to help? It wasn't a question. His unit, Human Defense Force Alpha, had been training for this moment. They were the first combat-ready human unit equipped with coalition technology. Yes, Noor confirmed. The Coalition Council has authorized the deployment of your team. It will be a limited mission. Protect the evacuation ships, then withdraw. When do we leave? Frank asked. Immediately. 12 hours later, Frank stood on the bridge of the Coalition vessel Swift Justice. His 20 soldiers were spread throughout the ship, each one serving alongside alien crew members. The Swift Justice was part of a small fleet, 3 warships and 5 transport vessels, heading to the Praxis system. Lieutenant Diane Powell, formerly of the Pathfinder and now Frank's communications officer, approached with a data tablet. Final checks complete, Commander. All human personnel are at their stations. Frank nodded. How's everyone holding up? Nervous, Powell admitted. But ready? Through the viewport, Frank could see the swirling blue-green vortex of fold space. Unlike human technology, which could only create small temporary folds, Coalition ships could maintain stable corridors through space. The journey that had taken the Pathfinder days would take them hours. Commander Miller called out the Coalition navigator, a 6-limbed Tellurian named Vex. We will arrive at Praxis in 10 minutes. Frank tapped his communication unit. All human personnel prepare for arrival. Remember your training, stay focused, stay together. As the countdown reached 0, the blue-green vortex disappeared, replaced by the blackness of normal space. The Praxis system appeared before them, a yellow star orbited by 7 planets. Their destination was the 3rd planet, a habitable world with 2 small moons. Status report, Frank ordered. 3 Vraxian hunter ships detected, reported the tactical officer. They're attacking the evacuation center. Frank studied the tactical display. The Vraxian ships were moving in the perfect coordination that made them so deadly. Their black insect-like vessels seemed to anticipate every move the defending Coalition ships made. We need to disrupt their formation, Frank said. Powell, signal the other ships. We're changing the plan. The Coalition commander, a veteran, named Trell, turned to Frank. The plan was to approach as a single unit. That's standard procedure. Standard procedure isn't working, Frank replied. The Vraxians expect that. We need to do something unexpected. He pointed to the tactical display. We'll split our forces. The Swift Justice will approach from above the orbital plane. The other 2 ships will come in from opposite sides. Trell's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. That's highly unorthodox. Exactly, Frank said. That's the point. After a moment's hesitation, Trell nodded. Very well. We will try your human tactic. The Coalition fleet split apart. The Swift Justice adjusted its course, using one of Praxis's moons to mask its approach. Frank felt the tension on the bridge as they maneuvered into position. The Vraxians have detected our other ships, Powell reported. They're adjusting to intercept. Frank watched the tactical display. The Vraxian ships were responding to the threat exactly as expected, moving to counter the approaching Coalition vessels. They hadn't yet detected the Swift Justice. Hold position, Frank ordered. Wait until they're fully committed. The Vraxian ships fired on the Coalition vessels. Energy beams lashed out across space. Now, Frank shouted. Full power to engines. Target the lead Vraxian ship. The Swift Justice burst from behind the moon, weapons charged. The sudden appearance of a 3rd threat seemed to confuse the Vraxian ships. Their perfect formation faltered. Fire, Frank ordered. The Swift Justice's main weapon, a particle accelerator cannon, discharged. The beam struck the lead Vraxian ship, punching through its organic hull. The damaged vessel spun away, trailing debris. The other Vraxian ships are attempting to regroup, Powell said. Frank watched as the enemy vessels tried to reform their formation. But something was different. Their movements were hesitant, uncoordinated. It's working. Maya Jackson's voice came over the comm. She was monitoring neural activity from the science bay. Our presence is disrupting their hive mind. The closer we get, the more pronounced the effect. Frank made a quick decision. Full advance. All ships, close distance with the Vraxian vessels. The Coalition ships pressed their attack. As they drew nearer to the Vraxian vessels, the enemy's movements became increasingly erratic. For the first time in decades of conflict, the Vraxians were showing signs of confusion. "They're retreating," Powell exclaimed. Frank watched in amazement as the two remaining Vraxian ships broke off their attack and accelerated away from Praxis. The bridge crew erupted in cheers. Admiral Noor approached Frank, her violet eyes wide with disbelief. "In 40 years of fighting, I have never seen Vraxian ships retreat from battle." Frank allowed himself a small smile. "First time for everything, Admiral." Later, as the evacuation ships lifted off from Praxis carrying thousands of refugees to safety, Frank stood with Maya in the observation lounge. "The effect was stronger than we predicted," Maya said, reviewing data on her tablet. "The human neural patterns completely disrupted their coordination at close range." "So we found their weakness," Frank said. Maya nodded. "What the Vraxians see as their greatest strength, their perfect unity, has become their vulnerability. They evolved to counter logical, predictable responses. They never encountered a species like humans before." "What do you mean?" "Humans are chaotic," Maya explained. "Unpredictable. You made a decision to split your forces that no coalition commander would have made. It wasn't logical by their standards, but it worked." Frank looked out at the stars. "So what happens now?" "Now," Maya said, "we take the fight to them." General Linda Carter stood before the United Earth Defense Council in the underground chamber beneath New Geneva. The room was silent as the military and political leaders of Earth studied the holographic display showing the current state of the Galactic War. "The success at Praxis was not a fluke," Linda said, pointing to a cluster of stars that now glowed blue instead of red. "In the 3 months since our first engagement, Human Coalition Joint Forces have liberated 7 systems from Vraxian control." President Eric Daniels leaned forward. "And the casualties?" "Minimal, sir," Linda replied. "The disruptive effect of human neural patterns gives us a significant advantage. The closer our ships get to Vraxian vessels, the more their coordination breaks down." Dr. Maya Jackson, now head of the Neural Warfare Division, stepped forward. "We've developed technology that amplifies human neural patterns. The Human Disruption Vessels, HDVs, extend the disruptive effect across entire regions of space." The hologram changed to show a sleek ship design unlike the typical coalition vessels. These were smaller, faster, and built specifically to maximize the effect of human brain activity on Vraxian neural networks. "The first 50 HDVs are ready for deployment," Linda continued. "With the Council's approval, we're prepared to take the next step, Operation Thunderbolt." "Which is?" asked the Chinese representative, her expression cautious. Linda took a deep breath. "A direct assault on Vraxian-controlled territory, not just defensive operations but a push into their core systems." Murmurs spread through the chamber. What Linda was proposing was unprecedented. The coalition had been fighting a losing defensive war for decades. The idea of taking the offensive seemed almost unthinkable. Admiral Noor, who stood beside Linda, as the coalition representative, spoke up. "I must emphasize that this plan is considered extremely high risk by coalition standards. Our military doctrine has never contemplated direct assaults on Vraxian core systems." "Because you've never had humans before," Linda said simply. President Daniels studied the holographic display for a long moment. Then he looked around the table at the other council members. "We've all seen the reports. For the first time in this war, the enemy is retreating. I believe it's time we pressed our advantage." He turned back to Linda. "Operation Thunderbolt is approved, General. Godspeed." 2 weeks later, Lieutenant John Perry sat in the pilot's seat of the HDV Disruptor, leading a squadron of 10 ships toward the Vraxian-controlled system designated Target Alpha. Unlike the massive coalition warships, the HDVs were built for speed and stealth, with crews of only 5 humans each. "All ships reporting ready, Lieutenant," said his communications officer, Sergeant Olivia Banks. John checked his instruments one final time. "Remember, people, our job isn't to destroy their ships. It's to get close enough to disrupt their neural network. The coalition fleet will handle the rest." The 50 HDVs had been divided into 5 squadrons, each targeting a different Vraxian system. They were the tip of the spear, the first human military force to penetrate deep into enemy territory. "Preparing for fold space jump," announced the navigator, Corporal Ben Harris. "On your mark, Lieutenant." John took a deep breath. "Execute. Jump." The stars blurred as the disruptor entered fold space. The journey to Target Alpha would take less than an hour using the improved drive technology. John used the time to review the mission parameters once more. Their objective was to infiltrate the Vraxian system, activate their neural disruptors at full power, and hold position until the Coalition fleet arrived. Exiting fold space in 3, 2, 1. The blackness of normal space reappeared, and with it, the Vraxian system. A yellow star surrounded by 12 planets with hundreds of artificial structures orbiting the fourth world. "Stealth systems engaged," Olivia reported. "No sign they've detected us yet." The squadron moved into position, spreading out to create a web of neural disruption around the main Vraxian world. Through the viewport, John could see the planet, a dark sphere covered with strange geometric structures that looked more grown than built. "Sensors detecting massive neural activity," reported Dr. Ryan Cooper, the science officer. "It's incredible. The entire planet seems to be connected in a single neural network." "That's our target," John said. "Prepare to activate disruptors." On my mark. The HDVs moved closer, their stealth systems masking their approach from Vraxian sensors. They were almost in position when alarms suddenly blared. "They've detected us," Olivia shouted. "Vraxian ships launching from the surface." John watched as dozens of black, insect-like vessels rose from the planet. Unlike previous encounters, these ships moved with precision and perfect coordination. The disruption effect hadn't yet taken hold. "Stay on course," John ordered. "We need to get closer. All ships prepare to activate disruptors." The Vraxian ships accelerated toward them, weapons charging. They would be in firing range in seconds. "Now!" John shouted. "All ships, activate disruptors at full power." The HDV's neural disruptors came online, broadcasting amplified human neural patterns across the system. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the advancing Vraxian ships faltered. Their perfect formation began to break apart as the disruptive effect took hold. "It's working," Ryan reported. "Their neural coordination is collapsing." Some Vraxian ships stopped completely. Others began to move erratically, firing weapons in random directions. A few turned and fled back toward the planet. "Maintain position," John ordered. "Keep the disruptors at maximum." As the disruption spread, John noticed something unexpected. The geometric structures on the planet's surface began to change color, shifting from black to a pulsing red. "What's happening down there?" he asked. Ryan studied his readings. "The disruption is affecting the entire planetary network. It's like we're giving them a massive headache." The effect continued to spread. More Vraxian ships shut down or flew in confused patterns. The structures on the planet pulsed faster. "Coalition fleet arriving," Olivia announced as space rippled and the massive Coalition warships appeared. Admiral Noor's voice came over the comm. "Excellent work, HDV Squadron. The disruption effect is stronger than we anticipated. We're detecting neural collapse throughout the system." As the Coalition fleet moved in, something unprecedented happened. A communication signal originated from the planet's surface. "We're being hailed," Olivia said in disbelief. "By the Vraxians." John exchanged shocked glances with his crew. "Put it through." The communication screen activated, showing a creature unlike anything they had expected. The Vraxian had a black exoskeleton with multiple limbs and a head that seemed to be mostly sensory organs. But what shocked John was its eyes. They held an intelligence and individuality he hadn't expected. The creature spoke, its words translated by the ship's computer. "Stop hurting us. I surrender." "I?" John repeated. "Did it just say I?" Ryan checked his readings. "The neural collapse, it's not killing them, it's separating them, breaking the hive mind into individual consciousnesses." John stared at the alien on the screen. They had come expecting to fight a war. Instead, They might have done something far more profound. They might have freed the Vraxians from their own hive mind. "Admiral," John said, opening a channel to Noor, "I think we need to rethink this mission. This isn't just a military operation anymore. We might be witnessing the birth of millions of new individuals." As coalition ships secured the system, John couldn't help but wonder what this meant for the future of the war. They had come to defeat an enemy, but instead, they might have created a new ally. 10 years had passed since Operation Thunderbolt. Admiral William Hayes stood at the viewport of the United Earth diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching as they approached the massive space station that served as headquarters for the Galactic Alliance. The structure was a marvel of cooperation, built by humans, former coalition species, and even Vraxians working together. William still found it hard to believe sometimes. The war that had nearly destroyed the galaxy had ended not with the extinction of an enemy, but with liberation. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Lisa Cooper as she joined him at the viewport. The neurologist had been instrumental in developing what became known as the separation protocol, the controlled neural interference that permanently severed the forced connections of the Vraxian hive mind while preserving individual consciousness. "A little," William admitted. 10 years of peace is worth celebrating, but we both know the work is far from done." Lisa nodded. 14 billion individual Vraxians, each one learning to exist as a separate entity for the first time. It's the greatest psychological challenge in galactic history. The Harmony docked with the station, and William led the Earth delegation through the arrival area. Representatives from 24 species waited to greet them. Most were former coalition members, but among them stood several Vraxians. Their black exoskeletons still appeared intimidating, but their postures and movements were different now, more varied, more individual. One Vraxian stepped forward. "Admiral Hayes, welcome to Unity Station." The voice was melodic, a far cry from the mechanical tones of the hive mind. "Ambassador Vex," William greeted the Vraxian. "It's good to see you again." Vex had been one of the first Vraxians to embrace individuality. Now he served as their chief representative to the Galactic Alliance. "The Council is gathering for the anniversary ceremony," Vex said. "They await your address." William nodded and followed Vex through the station's grand corridors. The walls displayed artwork from across the galaxy, including, he noted with pride, several pieces created by Vraxians. Art had become an important part of their journey toward individuality. The Grand Council chamber was filled with representatives from every Alliance world. At the center stood a simple monument, a crystal pillar containing a fragment of the original neural transmitter that had once controlled all Vraxians. It served as a reminder of how close the galaxy had come to complete subjugation. High Chancellor Thrawn, now ancient even by Arxian standards, hobbled to the center of the chamber. The room fell silent. 10 years ago, Thrawn began, we faced extinction. The Vraxian hive mind had conquered a third of our galaxy. Our civilizations were falling one by one. Hope was a luxury we could no longer afford. The old alien's eyes found William in the crowd. Then humans arrived. A murmur of appreciation spread through the chamber. Not with superior technology, Thrawn continued. Not with overwhelming military force, but with something far more powerful. The chaotic, unpredictable, beautiful individuality that is humanity's greatest strength. William listened as Thrawn recounted the key moments of the conflict. The first human engagement at Praxis, Operation Thunderbolt, and the discovery that the Vraxian hive mind could be broken apart without destroying the individuals within it. Today, we celebrate not a military victory, Thrawn concluded, but a triumph of freedom over control, of individuality over forced uniformity. And now, I invite Admiral William Hayes to address the Council. William walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. He had prepared a formal speech, but looking around the room, at the diverse species, gathered in peace, he decided to speak from the heart. 10 years ago, humanity took its first steps into the stars, he began. We were seeking knowledge, adventure, new frontiers. We never imagined we would find ourselves in the middle of a galactic war. He paused, looking at the Vraxian representatives. We also never imagined we would find billions of individuals trapped in a collective consciousness, unable to experience the fundamental right of being themselves. The Vraxian threat was real. The hive mind had indeed terrorized the galaxy. But what we discovered was that the Vraxians themselves were the first victims of that control. Ambassador Vex stepped forward. If I may add to Admiral Hayes's words. William nodded, and Vex addressed the chamber. I was born into the collective, Vex said. For centuries I existed as a mere fragment of the hive mind with no concept of self. When the human neural patterns first disrupted our network, I experienced terror unlike anything I had known. The silence in my mind, the absence of the constant voices, felt like death. The chamber was completely still as Vex continued. But then came something new. Choice. Thought that was mine alone. Feelings that belonged to no one else. It is difficult. Many of my people still struggle with individuality. Some reject it entirely. But the gift humans gave us was not forcing their way upon us, but giving us the freedom to choose our own way. William felt a lump in his throat as Vex finished speaking. The relationship between our peoples is complex, William continued after a moment. Humans broke the hive mind that had conquered so many worlds. But we also understand the responsibility that comes with such an action. That's why Earth has committed its resources not to further military endeavors, but to the Vraxian transition initiative. The initiative had been Earth's primary focus for the past decade, a massive program to help newly individual Vraxians adapt to their freedom. Thousands of human psychologists, doctors, teachers, and volunteers had traveled to former Vraxian worlds to assist in the transition. The war is over, William said. But our greatest challenge remains. How do we build a galaxy where all species, whether they evolved as individuals like humans or as collectives like the original Vraxians, can coexist in peace? How do we ensure that freedom is available to all without imposing our definition of freedom on others? He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from worlds that had once been bitter enemies. I don't have all the answers, but I know this. 10 years ago, this gathering would have been impossible. Today, it is a reality, and if we continue to combine the best of all our cultures, human unpredictability, coalition wisdom, Vraxian efficiency, and so much more, I believe the next 10 years will bring changes we can't even imagine. As William concluded his address, the chamber erupted in approval. Even some of the Vraxians, still learning the social customs of individual expression, tapped their limbs together in their version of applause. Later, as the celebration continued around him, William found himself standing again at a viewport, looking out at the stars. Dr. Cooper joined him, holding 2 glasses of the fizzy blue liquid that passed for champagne in interstellar gatherings. To 10 years of peace, she said, offering him a glass. William accepted it with a smile. And to what comes next? As they watched, a small ship departed from the station, a human vessel carrying Vraxian students to Earth. They were part of the first cultural exchange program, young individuals who had never known the hive mind, going to study human art, music, and philosophy. The species that had once terrorized the galaxy was finding a new path forward, and humanity, once alone in the cosmos, had found its place among the stars.